in under drains?
They were here when I came to the board.
I mean, if they
And
were
they've been
underlined,
resurfaced many times, I mean, many meaning multiple times, not.
so wouldn't they have shown problems sooner if it was 30 years? If they had been here 30 years?
I mean, so,
But, yeah, right, they've been
Right.
resurfaced.
They've been resurfaced several times, so that means,
It's like your driveway.
And this whole site was built on an underground stream,
Yeah.
So we're gonna put
which
downhill from that.
manifested itself at the high school and presumably here as well.
yeah, a lot of this comes up from underneath, so, right, so that could be, I won't say masked, but it could be masked. It could be that for some reason that the subsurface condition changed over time. But what happens is, right, the surface, you can repair it a number of times and it'll still function, but eventually the asphalt underneath starts to deteriorate, then nothing you do on the surface is ever gonna make that right. You actually have to get into the paving. Now, would it be paving? It would probably be the paving and stone underneath. You take it down to the soil subgrade, you had mentioned subdrain, that's possible. Depends what we see if we get down there and it's wet subgrade.
I bet you
We
know.
put some subdrain piping, the subdrain's super inexpensive. We factored that into as we're developing cost estimates for that. So that's one thought for, in this area. And then, you know, we're kind of calling this whole area Lot 1. I think this was one of the first concepts we had was, again, kind of centralized parking. You know what, let me just talk high level and then I'll drill into these little bigger drawings are way easier to read. That's Lot 1. Lot 2 is up here in the kind of upper left or northwest-ish corner, which we were thinking was predominantly for student parking. Down here, we've got Lot 3, which is maybe not the bang for the buck. You're picking up about 50 parking spaces there, but it was one of the few areas kind of proximate to other parking where we could fit something on a relatively flat grade. Now, circle all the way back around to transportation. This is a bit different than what we had shown last time for parking in terms of not having parking over top of the athletic field, the baseball field, and actually moving that bus parking up to the top. There's some grade to deal with there. There are some trees, but it is, you know, it's not impactful at all into the athletic facilities, and it certainly lets us then recapture the parking that's being used right now in front of the transportation center for actual transportation vehicles, not employee parking. So we kind of get to the more detailed drawings. So now that I've had my little speech on tennis courts, here's a little from tennis courts. So again, this is right here in the kind of central part of the campus, talking about how the tennis courts would be oriented. You know, whether these are 15 parking spaces, is that worth the cost for those? I think there's some discussion to be had. You know, we liked it because it was close to the courts themselves and to the stadium. And is there that overall need? You know, if I was going to prioritize maybe that parking wasn't the highest value, just because you're netting 15 spaces, but it's relatively flat, so it's easy construction. This we still think has some real value because you've got spaces here that can be utilized for middle school. You've got spaces here that can be used for any one of, you know, probably more likely middle school and athletics, although, you know, possibly on a big event or certainly a stadium event, that could have some value. You can barely see underneath here. This is the existing maintenance building. We've talked with Kelly about this as to, you know, there's been conversation prior to this discussion about potentially moving that anyway. That is again, a very flat area that almost looks like it was set up to potentially allow for additional parking. So again, relatively easy construction in terms of, you know, picking up quite a bit of parking spaces. This whole area, if you count all of those spaces, adds about 123 spaces just right here in the central part of the campus. Moving on to Lot 2, which is up here in the, again, top left corner, getting up towards Blooming Glen. So we've shown like 2 layers of parking here, 2 rows that if we decide, hey, we don't want to use this one because it's too impactful to green space, play space up in this area, this is easily broken out, it just remains as it is. Again, we were trying to show, hey, how many could we really try to reasonably fit in here before it completely eliminated the grass area up there, or before it got too much into some of the heavier grade in that part of campus. We did, after some conversation at our last meeting with the team, was show a pedestrian walkway path that connects to the sidewalk over Blooming Glen, as we understand some folks from that neighborhood like to get on the campus and have some difficulty getting from there, you know, basically walking the road. This will help get them off of there. We do have some great to deal with in here because this is a bit steep, but there is certainly a way to connect, which gets them internally to the circulation and pathways within This one has, I think off the top of my head, 100, it's actually 150 spaces, so I should say 150.
So the grass areas that you have built in between,
Yes.
is that cosmetic or is that because of the, you know, the room and so on?
You have to have steps there to go up.
Yes, it's great, you're exactly right.
So what happens if your stormwater availability doesn't support this?
So what'll end up happening with stormwater, we had a lot of conversation about this, so you've got all these facilities down here along South Fifth that we frankly don't want to touch. We would
I'm
rather.
sorry,
I'm sorry.
say it again?
So there's a number of stormwater facilities here at the bottom of campus along
Right.
South Fifth Street that to go in and modify those is probably more headache than it's worth. So
But what
each
if
of
they
the
can't?
areas, so each of the areas where we're showing new paving would likely have its own small stormwater facility.
Oh, great,
So now we still have to then get from the high part of campus to the low part, so
Right.
we'll have to pipe it down,
Pipe it down.
you know, we're connecting the road somewhere. But it's honestly, I mean, that's more what they call low impact design, it's pretty, instead of these huge regional basins, which we used to do even 10 years ago,
Mhm.
now it's a lot more focused on get it right where that drainage is occurring,
Mhm.
get it below grade, you know, treat what you have to treat, and then take the rest down by pipes.
okay, all right, thank you.
Absolutely. So then continuing around, again, I'll make a
I'm sorry, can you go back one slide? And I think you said this, but I think one of the things we talked about is if we decide we want one loop and not the other, the design still works.
Absolutely.
Right, because there are fields up there that we eventually work towards, and so we have to think about how Mr. Dover and I walked it last week, just to get a sense for how close are you getting, what's used up there. And so we could make a decision in the long term to think about one loop and not two, so it would add half the parking spots or whatever. Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Again, this one's kind of more of a, you know, we pick up about 46 spaces here. It is relatively flat ground. You kind of come up from that lower level and then it levels off a bit. There is some easy connectivity to the other drives and parking. Again, I mean, if we're in that dire of a need for additional spaces, this is probably one of the more construction-friendly areas to do it. We're just not picking up that awful many spaces.
Mr. Did you tell us, sorry, I'm thinking, did you tell us previously that this is relatively dry land? In that region, in our last discussion on
I
this?
think,
It's pretty
it's
dry.
kind of sloped there.
Okay,
I
it's
think
sloped,
it
so
is
it's not
dry.
really wet?
I don't believe in that area, no.
Okay, sorry.
So, you know, for
Thank you, Dave.
the little like built-in areas where you have the trees, you
Yes.
could potentially get those out and add 4 more spaces or 5 more spaces if you wanted to.
That's actually a township requirement.
Really?
Yes, we have to break
Yes.
up, I think you see it predominantly
Oh,
in,
yes.
right here, you can see
That was
every
a
10
requirement.
spaces.
Every 10 would tree.
Well, there were very specific requirements, and we had to replace the ones that died.
Yes.
And the contractor put them in at the wrong time of year, so a whole bunch of them
Yeah.
died.
That's why
Yeah.
there's
It
some
was
that are
a
this,
fun project.
That is a perpetual problem.
that's why some are like a cherry and some are
Development.
Yes.
different and they don't match.
You have to put the trees in.
Oh, and these guys go in
They got
the
their-
dry.
They don't get
You know
approval
what?
yet.
I noticed that.
We thought you just said the trees
Well,
out
every
there.
time in the spring you drive by, you're like, that one must have died.
Yeah.
And they didn't replace it at the same
And a whole
time.
bunch
And
of.
now we know why.
Yeah,
Well, we have that conversation all the time. because
it's so
Well,
bad.
from a plowing standpoint,
Yeah.
I'm talking preaching to the choir, I mean, like, you got plows now, like, this is very typical. Yeah, I mean, we see it in
Yeah.
many municipalities, they
That's
require, how do you green your parking lot, and they'll force you to put in every 10 or 15 spaces.
So this is a township rule,
Correct.
the East Rock Hill City rule.
So it's fair. So, yeah, so you'll see that actually all the layouts that we have, except this is-
Whenever we did that, one big massive parking lot. Should've just left it alone.
Yeah, once you touch it, the thing ends up having to be.
Cause it was huge, well, you're, like you guys weren't here. It was, cause you came in, the rock was here.
You can, the township required a certain number of parking.
This is the swimming
You
pool.
did have to increase the.
Oh, wait, I'm not on the same picture.
That's lots of fun.
Yeah, this is a little bit out of order from your handout. Yeah, sorry.
This is taking us over to the transportation center. So again, the whole genesis of what was happening over here was, hey, right now, we just don't have space to park some of the vans and the smaller buses. They're taking up, employee parking. We've looked at, which is actually in that sheet, moving those, either moving them up into this space and then putting the buses up above, or taking these and putting them up above. The whole point was move them, allow this to open back up for employee parking. And I mean, this is about the easiest construction there is. This is already paid. All we're gonna do is, restripe, I think, maybe, is that fenced? Currently, I think
Excellent
fenced.
list of comments.
So remove the fence as well, but all of a sudden you regain 48 parking spaces with very little effort. The bigger part of that effort being this lot.
Yeah.
So again, we had looked at, if you remember the last case, we were like, hey, what if we could move the field? That didn't really resonate very well, so we kind of moved that over. And we looked at, there is certainly grade, you can kind of, if you can see, there's these contour lines. So there's some grade to deal with there. We've got actually a fair amount of space from here to the property line that we may be able to slope a bit of that, and maybe we end up with a small retaining wall, but it's very, very doable. That picks up 55 spaces. We're showing 55 full-size bus spaces here. So again, so that could take full size and move them up, and now we park the smaller units down here. Or if it's more desirable to put the vans and the smaller buses up top, make the parking lot smaller, make the spaces smaller, make the drive aisle between them smaller. Either way, this is kind of a worst case because it provides for the largest vehicles that would likely be encountered there.
It's 55, not 15.
Correct.
It says 15 on the slide.
Yeah, that should say
Net.
55, that's a net.
Yeah. Yes, that's correct. Sorry, let's type up.
And then would you run like electricity up there to plug the buses in?
So I think that's short version, yes. I think if we're gonna move them from wherever they are that they're not served, we have to probably have to light this as well. Provide lighting for.
Katie, our diesel fleet's shrinking, if I recall, because every year we've been buying gas.
The little buses are gas, the big buses are still diesel.
72 passengers?
Yes, we're still buying diesel. We're the smaller buses.
We
are
get
gas.
propane buses.
Yeah, I tried that. That went over like a little.
You can get CNG.
But
Much
leaving
more.
the trees around the buses
Yeah.
is a good idea because it blocks the wind and blocks in the diesel cold. I'm gonna request a plug later this year to plug my truck.
There's CNG buses at Centennial. Are you guys ever interested? We did a bus project with them. Yeah.
They got a lot of money to buy their buses and put the fueling stations.
There's a big program through DEP. We got like a third of it paid for. They got, I think, like $400 some thousand, paid for the fueling station and then a third of the bus. But again, you could talk to them about their experience with CNG buses. Yeah.
So I circle back around to the overall plan, just to kind of touch on athletics. So one thing that you will not see in this drawing that was on previous iterations was synthetic turf field. So we had initially showed one, if it was gonna be located, it didn't make sense down here. Now we talked about it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, right. You said turf, now you got that.
Sure. Forgot the chart. Right. So we've taken it off at this point. I know there's been conversation from the 2017 study that looked at this area, and there's one thing I did want to mention, which was interesting to us, was when we spoke with the athletic director, he had indicated that, kind of off the cuff, like round numbers, like maybe once in the last 10 years that he had experienced that water was, only once in the last 10 years did drainage issues cause them to have to reschedule significant games or any games. And indicated that, well, we've got the blue areas shown here, were really where you saw most of the ponding, which was in the goal areas, which always get kind of skinned up and tend to collect water. So, that was, that's a little contrary to what we had been hearing.
It's a lot of.
The fields are.
Those three spaces or outside of those three spaces?
Those blue ones?
Yes.
Yeah.
Those blue ones? On the right
But
side?
outside of the blue ones, is there significant
No,
water?
just
Right.
blue spots, that's what you said.
And you said at the last meeting that addressing those significant wet spots is something that would not be overly difficult
Yes, that's
to,
correct.
to try to turn them into
A lot of it's
non-green
requirements.
spaces, right?
Yeah, that's a way different conversation than, hey, let's look at, you know, a natural turf field that's got sub-drain, you know, like field-wide drainage. That's a way more expensive, obviously expensive proposition. Here, it's a little more focused, to regrade, provide drainage to just make sure those areas are dry. I mean, look, you're always gonna deal with in a grass field, the areas of heaviest play are the ones that are gonna get beat up, which is the goal mounts. Football is right down the middle of the field, it's, you know, you know where they're gonna be with natural grass, you're always gonna fight a little bit of that battle. But all of that to say, it seemed like maybe that's where the effort wants to get focused, which I think is a far less significant effort than we kind of understood, maybe was accounted for by that line item in the 2017 study.
So you don't think that it needs the substantial redo that?
That's what we're getting at here, is that what we believe was in the new report, now again, we're working with a limited detail as far as what they have budgeted. We don't necessarily believe that it requires that time, that substantial, project as far as the regrade. We think it's more addressing those three areas as you discussed, which obviously would free up some dollars for elsewhere potentially, because that was money you guys had budgeted in the plan, so.
Now, what about the width of the fields and making sure that they are, you know, right within the regulations?
Yeah.
So that was something else that we understood, is that those fields on the right in terms of high school play are predominantly practice or middle school use. So those fields right now dimensionally are not gonna be compliant for a high school game. And if you wanted to make those fields wider to be compliant, now you are talking about significant. I don't know that they were designed to be for high school play, somebody, they're short.
Are they
They were
compliant
very short,
for
right,
middle
years
school?
back, not like some 4 years ago.
They,
played soccer.
I mean, yes, they're probably at the very minimum end of what NHFS allows, NHF, National High School Federation, of Sports Federation.
What's basically?
Those, some of there are regulation for middle school, just not high school.
Correct. Okay, yeah.
That's correct. So we kind of left that part of the discussion, I won't say open-ended, but I think it was a bit of a revelation to us that, hey, if the focus isn't just kind of those, and those are just graphics, they don't truly represent acre-full limits of where we saw water. It was the point of, yep, they're in the goal house, it's inside the 18 for most of those three areas. That's a pretty manageable solution that, in our estimation, does not require re-rating the entire field, the entire area.
Unless you want to do something, some other type of modification.
Right.
And so that's kind of what we wanted to present to you all and kind of get some feedback on that, because we're trying to put a plan together and figure out what we want is what the campus-wide site looks like as far as athletics and where we're planning to put folks, where they go, how we're scheduling. That feedback is kind of important to be able to use this.
And we are still gathering information as we look at, this is a question, not a comment. We are still gathering information from elementary and middle schools about the grading issues, because they were also in the report.
Yes.
That there were other spaces that are routinely used for community or playground or those types of things. And you do not have all that information yet, but that will be part of the update that will provide us once we can tell you what spaces to look at.
And our plan would be at the next facilities committee that we would have the answer to those questions too. But again, the other thing that we had discussed was potentially an additional track, location for another track. Whether it made sense to be on this site, you know, if you were looking at an athletic turf, then it might make more sense to locate it on this site. If not, does that make sense to be at South, you know, at Poppy or that location? So that was something we're not showing yet, but it was something that came up as far as a potential need for the district is another track.
Well, all right, so what about baseball fields? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah.
I'm a baseball guy, so I'm gonna, yeah.
You said it's in the plan, you
Well, I
said.
know.
Yeah.
So we were gonna cover.
Wait, I thought you played soccer, now he's playing.
No, I wasn't excited, but yeah, baseball's that's me.
Yeah, all right.
But yeah, just my question, because I'm glad John covered it like that. To take away, what are your thoughts on fields?
I mean, so, let me see this perfect, so like,
I don't take offense, so it's
no,
like.
I think it's a function of how, we didn't see like, oh my gosh, there's a real drainage problem here, or we really got a big issue. And also, I mean, for middle school play, and like, I'm not to shortchange middle school play, but, I think they're fine for middle school play. I don't think that we didn't see like a ponding issue here, there's a real problem. I think it's like, just the maintenance of the infield, maybe, kind of gets you there. We didn't see, one thing I will say, let's say we do any of these other, parking lot projects, and we have dirt, because we're gonna generate fill out of this. Well, then we've got dirt we gotta use anyway, we don't have to create that dirt. Well, then we might look at the outfields of these and say, you know what, we gotta spoil it anyway, it's gonna be way more cost effective to spoil it on campus. So maybe if we find a little bit of this, we can do that. I don't think that I see us rebuilding the infields, because now you're talking about, bringing in Dynatex material and all that, that starts to add up. But I think the outfields, and honestly, some of that fill helps us take care of the issue up on the hill too.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole point of obviously with dirt work, I don't wanna have to bring dirt in or truck it out, because that's where you get hammered with cost. So we'll find a place here to spoil it, and usually we look for athletic fields that, hey, can we either just raise them up or level them off? Long way of saying, I don't see a real huge issue here, and I think if we took a good walk in the outfields, we could find areas of, scratch this up, we'll level this off a little bit, get a nice good slope across there with the dirt we're gonna generate for the other projects.
And you have two major excavations, major excavations.
Yes.
Yes,
So, the one on the left and the one on the right, right?
correct, so this top corner's gonna move a bunch
Yeah,
of dirt.
that's gonna be a lot of dirt generated from that.
No, we were looking for big things.
It's not a lot of dirt.
Well, that's,
It's not a lot of
Just-
dirt.
It's a high school, so.
Expect
I'm just
rock.
saying.
You're gonna be this far, you're going to hit rock. I kid you not, it would be this deep, and you're gonna hit rock.
we'll have to put that in our contingency
Solid
then.
rock.
Yes.
Rock will be there.
Yeah.
So, just jumping back, I know that there was mention about outdoor basketball courts. In that tennis court, instead of adding 2 extra tennis courts, could you add an outdoor basketball court there? Would that be I don't know how big a basketball court is, but that would just be a way to have, what?
Yes.
Because I know that was mentioned somewhere about an outdoor basketball court.
We saw that in the 2017 study. That wasn't something that came up while we were having this discussion, but to your question, yes, the footprint of, if we took that down to, I wanna make sure we have the orientation correct, but like, 2 courts off, I know we would have enough room for an outdoor basketball court and still have 5.
And they would be about the same material on the, right, with a fence, the ball can go out.
It's gonna be
It'd be a-
cheaper.
It would be a decent
Yeah.
place for an outdoor basketball court.
And when you talk about
Less expensive than.
like the small lot that is near the tennis courts,
Yes,
that could also be
absolutely.
a fenced-in play field. Like you could decide to have 7 tennis courts and have a space that has basketball
Yeah.
courts and let street hockey.
We have
You know.
space here.
Right,
Yeah.
that there are some options there. One of the benefits of 7 courts, why they get to that, is that allows you, they play 7 matches at a time. And if you don't have 7, you can't host postseason competition. And so if we ever had a team that was there, we would have to host a match someplace else. They'll let you do a regular season here because not everybody plays at the same time. But 7 is the magic
They
number
jumped
of
over
tennis,
the big things.
which is why when you see them complex, you're usually 7.
I took that as a like,
No, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that before, it wasn't an arbitrary 7, it was,
Was
I
like
think this is
7
that's
is what?
why. But that point is also spot on that I would easily sacrifice those 15 parking spaces for a hard surface basketball.
The
And then
ones
you
up
have
at the
to
top,
score.
Yeah.
Like 50
And you could
Do
strike
we have
that
a need
other
for
ways
that?
too, for rollers.
like hockey.
Hockey or whatever.
Absolutely.
I don't know.
Baseball field.
Cause then like in the summertime, and like this isn't
I know.
huge, but in the summertime, like the track's open, the basketball court could be open, the tennis courts get open, right? So it would all be right in that general
Sure.
area
Yeah, yes, very
for the
simple.
public to use or the kids there.
We did not discuss the idea of bringing JV and varsity baseball or softball to campus. So I think, to your question, if we were looking to provide that size baseball field, yeah, we're up the hill. I mean, honestly, it's probably,
It's not.
it's gonna wanna compete, this is gonna wanna compete with whether you do a second track here, because you're gonna do a lot of dirt work to get that to work. Maybe, this huge base up here, you end up having either the baseball and softball fields there. Now, if you do that, you might get rid of these, and then maybe this does come back to being, you know, again.
I just was throwing ideas out there, because I don't know if you guys talked
Sure.
about, it. That's all I'm discussing. Because
Yep.
originally last month, it was covered up the baseball field, so that's why I'm bringing it.
Understood. No, absolutely.
If you talk to any of the folks who've been around since Central was open, Central Middle, they will tell you about the track that was supposed to go there. It was in the original plans, the board decided not to do it. The principal lobbied long and hard for many years, so it's out there in the ether, and it will probably come up if you start talking about another track
And
somewhere.
it was
And we
going to
used
be
to have a
around,
track itself.
it was going to be around
Yes,
the
it's gravel.
existing football field?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right, okay, thank you.
What's still there?
It's
Okay.
just a
It's
matter of
just
vacant
building
a
one?
year.
Yeah, yes.
It's gravel.
Yeah.
It's lovely.
But that was what we were looking at.
Great when I was a kid.
So, yeah, I'm gonna tie it to, so like, we talked about circulation at Sellersville, West Rock Hill. We actually had started, worked up some ideas on Penn South, but then we kind of stepped away from Penn South because there was some conversation about, well, does that site, maybe building programming needs to go forward a little bit, does that site ultimately maybe warrant, Bruce is the architect to speak to it, but if there was an expansion of that building, all those things wanted to impact site circulation, which we said there's no point kind of doing that until we know some of those answers, otherwise we're, you know, it's kind of not gonna go anywhere.
That was so.
Correct. Yeah, sorry, not this, yeah, that's it. We don't have that in the slide. So Sellersville, as we understood the challenges, the blue and the yellow right now show, ignore that, that's orange. The blue and the yellow show that buses and cars, they have to all come in West Ridge, that's tough to change, but that they're all circulating in the same area, which is just, sounds like a real challenge, right? So we looked at it and said, look, they still have to come in West Ridge, but can we split them so that we bring parents out this existing drive, move around the play area and come back, so we create a very significant area of parent stacking. And now buses actually, you know, through some sort of like a, turns out we drew this up. So buses would actually want to come in separately and loop this way. So you're still going to have them coming in together, but we're peeling them off as quick as we can, so this isn't conflicting where kids are discharging from buses. A lot more room to stack cars within campus. The thought was we would then look to bring cars back out, so this is still one way in, two way. And then have a separator in here, probably lose some of this grass island by the parking, to then define a path for buses to come in and be separated, coming back out here.
So 3 lanes.
Correct,
Yes.
that's correct. Likely separated.
That's such a great idea.
It does help to split things up. You do have a pinch point here on it when they discharge, because then parents are gonna come here, presumably they will have to stop. So they would come out, they would stop. Buses would have the through move, because they would come in, discharge kids, and then off they go. So,
What are they currently doing with all that field space over there?
up in this,
Open field?
yeah, so you're talking up in this area?
Yeah, the whole, yeah.
I mean, I think it's their only kind of field space replacement.
That's very baseball.
There you go.
So there's, he's already explored out there?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, yes, I'm sorry. So like, this area is play. So we did look at whether or not we may have to replace that paving if we're gonna be sending a fair amount more traffic there. We would do a paving analysis. We're accounting for having to replace it just in case, but it certainly does help. Because it's
Over there? I thought we just, I think we just repaved all.
that driveway path.
Can I ask you quickly, you go to the other one where you actually show the buses? Where you have the buses stacked, what I would call the very first bus,
So
right?
first bus in terms of being able to discharge kids.
No, first one, yeah, that. Is there a reason you don't go further? I think when we checked the numbers, if I remember correctly, in the afternoon, which is really the only time you have these stacking issues, is there are 11 buses. And so design something for 10 buses. Now, that doesn't mean next year there won't be 12. I mean, I do understand. But did you stop there on purpose because you thought you would get to 10, or could you go further if we needed to so you could put 12 spaces in there? Kids would just walk a little further.
That's it. Yes,
Okay.
we could. It was more trying to say, hey, where do we, how do we keep them as close to the building as
Yeah, okay.
possible? But you certainly have room to keep stacking. I mean, honestly, we could run them all the way around the corner, it's how far you
Yes,
comfortable
okay.
it's,
But it is possible to stack them there if we need it.
Absolutely.
That's all I was asking.
Well, and one of the things which we didn't show in here